The year is 1979. The Muppets are now movie stars. The Muppet movie had made $65.8 million in the box office. With the success in the Muppet movie came a new appreciation for Jim Henson's work, and the thought of Jim being a children's puppeteer had kind of gone away. But now a new label had been given to Jim, and one that he did not appreciate. He was now known as the Muppet Guy. As much as he loved his characters, he never wanted to be painted into a corner. He never considered himself to be just about the Muppets. Quote, "By the time I'm actually producing something, part of me is wanting to do something else. I don't particularly want to make my life go crazy during doing several things at the same time, but it always seems to happen that way." Around this time, Jim had decided that his next project would be a fantasy film called The Crystal. In 1980, The Crystal was still being developed at the Muppet Workshop in New York City. Jim had been creating puppets for this film for about a year and had started to pitch The Crystal around to different studios in the summer of 1979. With the release of the Muppet movie, this allowed Jim to work more and more on The Crystal. There was just one thing standing in Jim's way: a Muppet movie sequel. This video is brought to you by Rogue Energy. When I'm up in my room editing, writing, or gaming, I love to have a good drink with me. It keeps me focused and relaxed. Rogue Energy is absolutely my go-to drink. It is much healthier than any other energy drink. It has 0 sugar, it is gluten-free, and paleo-friendly. They have 16 delicious flavors available like Radiant Rush, Rocket Pop, Sour Candy, Grape Popsicle, and many more. Rogue also has hydration available with flavors like Fruit Punch, Rainbow Candy, and Strawberry Bubblegum. Head on over to rogueenergy.com to get your energy or hydration drinks, starter kits, or shaker cups, and use code BBDIZ10 for 10% off your entire order. Thank you to Rogue Energy, and again, use code BBDIZ10 for 10% off your entire order. Now, let's get back to the video. No script for The Crystal existed yet, just a screen test and a treatment that Jim had written. After The Crystal was declined by Paramount, Jim prepared to pitch his film to Lou Grade. Lou Grade had previously taken a chance on The Muppet Show and The Muppet Movie. Before Jim could do the pitch, David Laser, who was an executive producer on multiple projects with Jim in the future, pulled him aside and told him that the success of the Muppet movie was so great and that there was so much demand for a sequel. David felt that if they waited a while to make another Muppet film, that audience wouldn't care after a while. He also knew Lou Grade was ready for a sequel. Jim was disappointed because he wanted to make a non-Muppet project badly. However, David Laser knew how important this was to Jim and convinced him to make a Muppet sequel. He also promised Jim that he would negotiate with Lou Grade himself and make sure to get funding for The Crystal after a Muppet sequel was made. Jim agreed, and he would direct this Muppet sequel himself. David Laser kept his promise and negotiated with Lou Grade personally. The negotiations ended with an agreement that looked like this: $14 million being invested to the next Muppet feature, and another $13 million for The Crystal. Lou Grade also agreed to allow Jim to begin production on The Crystal immediately after the Muppet sequel wrapped filming. Jim was disappointed to delay The Crystal, but decided to give his all to the Muppet sequel. Jerry Jewell would be the first to take a crack at the script for The Muppet Movie 2. Jim Henson also approached Jack Rose, a comedy gag man and screenwriter who wrote many Bob Hope films, including Road to Rio and The Great Lover. Jim wanted MM2, as it's referred to in Jim's notes, to pay homage to early movie musicals. He had a difficult time articulating his visions for the story, but basically, he wanted Kermit to be a reporter/detective who had to compete with a rival for Miss Piggy's affections. He also wanted MM2 to have, quote, "have the fun and joy of those earlier films, referring to earlier movie musicals, and have a positive attitude towards life and be filled with several hilarious sequences. He thought of the end scene having a big chase and ending with all the Muppets floating down in parachutes, singing the closing number. Jerry Jewell and Jack Rose took these directions and started writing the first draft of a screenplay. Jewell and Rose were having trouble with the draft, and in March of 1980, when Jim came to London to work on the script with Jerry, he wasn't pleased with what they had. Jim said, quote, "There are a great many problems with this draft." He felt it wasn't at all what he had asked for, and the writing duo started work on a second draft, titled The Muppets Hit the Road. The script needed help. So when Jim was in Los Angeles, he met with television writers Jay Tarsis and Tom Pratchett, who had previously written for Bob Newhart and Carol Burnett. They discussed a rewrite in April, and later that month, they met at Jim's house in London and discussed scripting further. While the duo helped with scripting, Jim got to work putting together his team. He already had David Laser as executive producer. Jim met with Ossie Morris, an Oscar-winning cinematographer. He was the great cameraman Jim was looking for. They also added songwriter Joe Raposo as well to start writing songs. After working tirelessly, Pratchett and Tarsis had a first draft for Jim. This draft was titled Muppet Mania, and Jim liked this script. Another draft was completed in June. This time it was titled The Good, the Bad, and the Muppets. Jim decided it was time to name the film properly, and had the Muppet staff help name the film. A contest was held to come up with the best name. Some suggestions were The Rocky Muppet Picture Show, A Froggy Day in London, The Great Muppetcapade. This name had been written in pencil by Lisa Henson, Jim's 19-year-old daughter. The name was written on a piece of paper and caught Jim's eye. Next to the name, suggestions were crossed out alternates as if she was trying to decide which sounded the best when writing it. Jim circled The Great Muppetcapade and circled one of the crossed out words, caper. The name of the film would be The Great Muppet Caper. In July 1980, a third draft of The Great Muppet Caper's script was completed. This draft contained elements for all four writers. The draft contains many elements of the final film. When the songs were written and ready to go, they were added to the script, and the final screenplay was ready in July 1980. Due to the fact that The Muppet Show was filming in London at this time and the film was set in London, cinematographer Ossie Morris had been scouting locations around England to film. On September 4th, 1980, The Great Muppet Caper began shooting. This was the first time Jim was in the director's chair for a feature-length motion picture. The first scene was shot in London's Battersea Park. And the first scene that was shot for The Great Muppet Caper was the scene where all the Muppets ride bikes. This scene is a part of a musical number. The effect was pulled off by Brian Henson, Jim's 16-year-old son. It was done by connecting all the Muppets together with a rod and radio-controlled bikes. Brian had spent weeks before the shoot helping Foz Fazakas figure out the effect at the Muppet Workshop. Another impressive puppetry moment in Caper is during Miss Piggy's fantasy. This movie would be the first time that we see Miss Piggy's full body. Jim knew he wanted something in Caper to be, quote, something new, something to talk about. He came up with an elaborate underwater ballet number where Miss Piggy would be shown in water. His idea was brilliant, but it had major problems they needed to figure out. First, how would Frank Oz puppeteer and not be seen? Second, you can't just take a regular Miss Piggy puppet and put it in water. The foam head would soak up the water and the water would discolor its skin. After working hard for a long time at the New York Muppet Workshop, the team came up with a puppet that was made out of compressed urethane foam, which didn't soak up water. After several more weeks, the Piggy Research and Development Department developed a flocking that would not lose its color. After all that, there was still one more problem. Frank couldn't puppeteer the head without it tearing. So multiple Miss Piggy waterproof heads were made, just for when one tears it could easily be replaced during the shoot. Thanks to the hard work of Carolee Wilcox, Jim and Frank were ready for the scene. A 80-foot long, 55 feet wide, and 8 feet deep swimming pool was constructed for the comfort of Frank Oz and the other swimmers. The scene would go on to be the most remembered scene in the entire film. After 20 weeks of filming, The Great Muppet Caper wrapped on February 6, 1981. The last scene to be filmed was the hot air balloon sequence. During the filming of that particular sequence, a Fozzie puppet was burned by the hot air balloon. The plot revolves around Kermit, Fozzie, who play twin brothers that look nothing alike, and Gonzo, who are investigative reporters, tasked with investigating the theft of a diamond necklace. After completely missing the theft in the opening sequence, they travel to London to interview the victim. They stay at the Happiness Hotel with a bunch of other Muppets. The gang go to interview Lady Holiday, but mistake her secretary, played by Miss Piggy, as Lady Holiday. Miss Piggy falls for Kermit and decides to pretend to be Lady Holiday to impress Kermit. The necklace was stolen by her brother, and after more successful thefts, he frames Miss Piggy. With the help of their new friends from the Happiness Hotel, Kermit, Fozzie, and Gonzo apprehend the thief, and the Muppets return to America by plane. As promised, immediately after wrapping The Great Muppet Caper, Jim spent the next month between New York and London working on The Dark Crystal. Filming for Jim's first non-Muppet film began on April 15th, 1981. The Great Muppet Caper premiered in the US on June 26, 1981, and premiered in the UK on July 30th, 1981. Caper was a huge success, again with critics and audiences. The film grossed $31.2 million at the box office. Great Muppet Caper earned an Academy Award nomination in 1982 in the Best Original Song category for The First Time It Happens. Let's watch The Great Muppet Caper now, and let's see what I think about it.
All right, so I've watched Great Muppet Caper, The Great Muppet Caper, obviously now, and here to talk about it. So, surprisingly, this is like my second time watching this movie. I didn't watch this movie very much as a kid compared to the other Muppet movies. And I don't really know why that is. Yeah, but I was missing out on something pretty good. This is another classic. You know, there's a lot of classic moments in this. There's a lot of bits that are really funny in here. Like, the gag writing for this one was, I don't know, maybe even better than the original Muppet movie. And the story is not better than the original Muppet movie. We'll get to the story in a little bit, but since we're talking about the gags, there's a tremendous amount of hilarious moments in this. Like the light falling constantly in the Happiness Hotel. Or the man Muppet, Miss Piggy, in the suit, riding the motorcycle at the very end of the film. That was hilarious. I love Man Muppet. I can't call it Muppet Man because that is a thing in the Muppet universe. But Man Muppet, Miss Piggy, absolutely love it. Maybe one of the funniest things in any Muppet movie. It's literally just a dude in a Miss Piggy suit riding the motorcycle. It's hilarious. Man, did they get their money's worth with the full body Miss Piggy. The multiple shots. And it's also hilarious to me that the first time you see the full body Miss Piggy, it's her back. You know? Quite a frame. Like, each Muppet film, Muppet project kind of pushes different things of puppetry that were groundbreaking at the time. Like the bike scene in Muppet, in the original Muppet movie. I think this one, a lot more, they were trying to go with full body shots, and they were getting away with it. There was one time where you could see Jim Henson's shadow. It was in the Happiness Hotel room. When Kermit is getting ready for the date, you can see Jim Henson's arm shadow on the wall. But yeah, another thing that they were really pushing was obviously all the Muppets riding bicycles and doing it in a very much smoother way than in the original Muppet movie. They're circling around. They're not just going in a straight line like the original Muppet movie did. So, good on Brian Henson for coming up with that technology, because it is an unbelievable. It's an unbelievable shot in this movie, and it was probably mind blowing then, and it's mind blowing here as well. There's a lot of fourth wall breaks in this film. Much more than, I shouldn't say much more than usual, because there's a lot of fourth wall breaks, but I feel like that becomes the style here. There wasn't, sure, it's the Muppet movie smashes the fourth wall because it's a film that you're watching in a film. So, but they don't address the camera very often. They don't address, literally in the script, it's written like the character states a plot device or plot element, and they literally say, "Why are you saying that?" And they're like, "Well, the audience needs to know it." And then there's multiple times that happens, so it's like they completely smash the fourth wall, which is cool. I like when the fourth wall is broken. I think it's a cool element of storytelling. The opening scene in this film is insane. There's a lot going on. I feel like they really went all in on the opening scene on this one, which is great. There's a lot of, in the Muppet movies after this, there's a lot of big opening numbers like this, so you kind of see that start here. I don't think that the soundtrack on this one, I think, is lacking. There's not one song that I had heard before, and I think it's just kind of a forgettable soundtrack. I could be wrong, but to me, I think the music on this one is very lacking compared to the other Muppet movies. All of the characters written original to this film, except for Lady Holiday, and not even really, because half of the film, Kermit thinks that Miss Piggy is Lady Holiday. So pretty much all of the original characters that are written for this film are written terribly. And I just think that the villain in Nicky, I think he's awful. I think he's an awful villain. His motivations doesn't make any sense. He's the brother of Lady Holiday. Why isn't he getting the same amount of money that she is? Why does he have to steal from his own sister? Can't he just ask her for some of her jewelry? She's rich. She can buy more. Why doesn't he just ask her for her jewelry and then he sells it from there and makes money? Or why isn't he getting the inheritance from, assuming the parents in this situation, or from her? Why isn't he getting the same amount of money? Normally when you have a rich family like this, all the members of the family are well off. Why isn't he? That's never explained. And I get that it's nonsense humor. I get that none of it is supposed to be taken seriously. But why is Miss Piggy framed? And why are the cops just like, that's fine? That dude brought her the jacket. Wouldn't it be a little suspicious that he brought the jacket to her? Especially because I know it's supposed to be tongue-in-cheek, but he is so in that scene. He is beyond guilty. And I know that it's not supposed to be taken seriously, but it's like watching it, it just doesn't, the joke doesn't pan out well. But all of the Muppet performers and all of the Muppet characters are exceptional, as usual. they're not playing themselves in this. They have their names, obviously, but they're not playing themselves. They're playing characters in this world. Kermit, Fozzie, and Gonzo are all American reporters. They go to Britain to solve the necklace case. Miss Piggy decides to act like she is Lady Holiday. They fall in love. Miss Piggy gets framed. Miss Piggy breaks out of jail. At the very end of the movie, they're about to the criminals are about to steal more from Lady Holiday, but they of course wreck that. Miss Piggy rides in on the motorcycle. The day is saved. Again, thinking about the villain. The villain's henchmen just aren't characters. You know nothing about them. The only thing you know about them is that they're models. You don't know their names. They never talk once. So everything about the villain I hated. But everything about the Muppets I loved. So that really saved it. You know what I mean? The Muppet writing is excellent. And that's usually what happens in these films. Usually the villain is not as strong, but the Muppet writing is so strong, and the jokes, most of them land so well that it's such an enjoyable watch, and it keeps your attention throughout the entire film. And that's exactly what this film does. It's enjoyable. The Muppet writing is strong, and it does exactly what it needs to do. Next video, we will talk about Muppets Take Manhattan. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and consider subscribing. And I'll see you all in the next one.